Hi guys, Olive here today to do a very special video with a very special guest. This is my husband.
Hey.
This is Tony, the elusive husband. How long have I been trying to get you to do a video like this with me?
Too long.
Way too long. I think I posed the idea when I first started this channel, and every time you said, no. But I was finally able to convince him to do this because this book, Significant Zero, was just released on September 19th. And Tony here did a review of this book for Open Letters Monthly.
Yeah, I did.
I think it's really great.
Thanks. Well, you're biased.
I am biased, but I still think it's really great.
Thanks.
I will link that down in the description box below if you guys would like to go and give it a read. You talk about a lot in that review, but I feel like there's so much to it. And there's so much to the video game industry that it doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, it's a very small tip of a very impenetrable iceberg.
I thought this would be a good opportunity, since I have also gone on to read the book, for us to sit down and discuss the book a little bit. Yep. So it'll be a mixture of kind of like a review / discussion on the book itself and topics that the book discusses. This, of course, is the book that I said we will be talking about. This was just released on September 19th by Atria Books. This hardcover copy comes in at 290 pages. What did you give it on Goodreads? 5 stars?
Yep.
I gave it 4, I think. But then again, I didn't connect with the subject matter
quite
as much as
that's the main thing is I connected with a lot of what he talked about, specifically about analyzing games and where things are going and some of the design philosophies and things like that. So that's kind of what put it over for me.
Yeah. I guess we should say who Walt Williams is in the industry. So
yeah,
I'll let you handle that.
He's a veteran games writer. He got his start on stuff like working as taking screenshots on BioShock, and he kind of worked his way up from kind of lowly entry-level tasks to writing scratch dialogue for various games like Mafia 2.
Writing lore.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then his big break was getting to be the lead writer on Spec Ops: The Line. And coming out soon, he's one of the lead writers on Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is really exciting.
When does that come out?
That's a great question.
So what do you think it is about Walt Williams and his career, at least so far, that makes him interesting enough to have written a whole memoir about it?
Well, first of all, it's the arc of his career, I found in the book. Going from basically, I think he got referred to 2K games from a friend and almost didn't get the job or because he almost screwed up the interview.
Didn't he say like, I don't really know?
Yeah, he said something like, or no, he's like, I don't own a console right now or something like that.
You do realize that you were applying for a video game job.
Yeah. But no, it's just the arc of going from that to working on a smorgasbord of titles to doing a bunch of different things like writing scratch dialogue to, being lead writer on one of his own games. Parts of it are, a lot of it is quite abrasive.
He's quite abrasive.
He's quite abrasive. He comes across very abrasive in the book. But
still somewhat likable, but definitely.
Yeah, like I don't. It didn't turn me away from it. It was more like, oh wow, this guy's got, some edge to him. Yeah. But I feel like all of that's rooted in the fact that he so deeply gives a shit about what he does.
Yeah.
So that was the main appeal for me. And then, the stuff where he talks about, there's little side things where he talks about games and his favorite games and insights into writing and things like that. I just ate that shit up.
I definitely found that reading about his personality, you don't necessarily like him. He doesn't necessarily want you to like him.
And I think, yeah, exactly. I think it's a memoir written by somebody who is looking back at how they used to be.
Yeah. And
they don't want to sugarcoat anything. They don't want to make it seem like this perfect, like, oh, I was just so great and everyone loved me and, I never did anything wrong. No, he lays all of it out and he's like, no, I'm kind of a dickhead. I did some shitty things.
Yeah, it does have a reflective tone to it.
Yes.
And it's not even necessarily apologetic. It's just like, I did these things, it wasn't great. I kind of wish I wouldn't have.
It's all told through a lens of self-awareness.
Yes, he's definitely much more self-aware at the present moment than he was at that point.
I mean, I haven't read it, but I saw the film. It's nothing like Wolf of Wall Street, where it's it's nothing like.
Oh yeah,
that.
no. Jordan Belfort was Jordan Belfort when he did all that shit.
Yeah, the Quaaludes.
And then Jordan Belfort is the same guy writing about it. And instead, he's like glorifying, like, look at all this crazy shit I did. Yeah. That is what the Wolf of Wall Street is. This book is not like
not that at all.
He's a really interesting guy because, like I said, you do not like him necessarily. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's also storytelling. It's what he does for a living. He writes story, so he definitely knows how to tell his own story in the most entertaining way.
Right.
And not necessarily painting himself as the most wholesome character in the process.
He recognizes that, that's the appeal of his story. And so he just, like, lays it on the line and tells you like it is.
And I do think there's another motivation, like we have talked about, to him laying himself out there basically for scrutiny, is because it's kind of this feeling like, if I'm going to be honest about this, if I'm going to be honest about games, if I'm going to be honest about what needs to change, and I'm going to need to be honest about me first, because I can't, if there's going to be honesty here, it has to be across the board.
Because he's the conduit to all of that. So that is the focal point through which everything else is going to come out through this book. And if that's not established, then otherwise I think it would feel
it'd be null and void.
Dishonest, right? Yeah.
This book is very much two different things. It is talking about Walt Williams' journey in the industry, and then talking about the state of things and what video games are currently doing. So there is a little bit of both of those things, and I think the place where they really come together is when he talks about his work on Spec Ops.
Yeah.
So can you describe what Spec Ops is? Because I'm not going to be able to do it.
To those unfamiliar with the games industry within the last, I want to say, 20 years, 20, 25 years. Yeah, that sounds about right. There was kind of an explosion of military-themed first-person shooters, starting mainly with Call of Duty, with Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Call of Duty was a franchise at that point, but it became another thing entirely. Before that, Call of Duty was mainly focused on World War II, was kind of, hectic, that kind of stuff, and I'll say it was a bit more tasteful, but what Modern Warfare basically enabled was just this kind of assembly line of military shooters coming out every single year for close to 5 to 10 years. And then there's stuff like Gears of War, which is a third-person cover-based shooter where your guy has a chainsaw who can run up to people and just cut them in half. And that's the main... So the point being is that violence in games kind of ramped up, and it started to create this sense of desensitization to it, because there's just so much all the time, and, for someone like me who's playing games all the time, you just don't really think about it anymore. So you just can kind of power through a game, not even really care about the story, because game stories in general tend to be left by the wayside, but that's a whole other...
We will talk about that.
That's a whole other discussion. Spec Ops, it knows its place amongst all of these other military shooters. It knows that you're picking up this game. You're probably thinking, okay, this is another churned out thing, another generic shooter. And it assumes that you're just going to play no matter what, and you're going to go through it. You might not necessarily understand it, but you'll play it all the way through.
Doing everything you're told.
And that's the important part, doing everything you're told. And, I'm going to spoil it, so just spoilers. I guess if there's a thesis to the game, it's more all the terrible things that happened in it were because you, the player, kept playing and didn't think to yourself, well, this is kind of messed up. I should probably stop playing. And it results in Captain Walker, the guy you're controlling, basically losing his grip on reality and developing post-traumatic stress.
That becomes apparent in the other atmospheric things in the game too, like the text that it shows you, like where tips would normally be.
With the loading screens in the game, your generic loading screen in a game is usually, it starts off with tips, and it says stuff like, press X to crouch, make sure you reload when your clip is low, wink.
Wouldn't have done that otherwise.
Yeah, but then they slowly start to get twisted a little bit. Yeah. Not enough where you think something's wrong, but you start to think to yourself.
And at the point in the game where the player is no longer reading them, which I think is an interesting choice.
Right, yeah, it kind of, yeah, exactly. You kind of go through, the first time you're just like, all right, yeah, tips, I know what I'm, fine, I get it.
Yeah.
And then, I guess around the second third of the game is when it starts to kind of one of them, I think, straight up just gives you the definition of cognitive dissonance. It just says cognitive dissonance is, when you hold two conflicting thoughts.
A little heavy-handed, but
yeah, and you kind of just, you go, oh, great.
And they also start to berate the player a little bit, like
that comes at like the last act of the game. They're saying stuff like, how many Americans have you killed today? You're don't worry, you're still a good person. Which, I mean, a lot of people found them to be very effective. Some people found them to be a bit heavy. A lot of people found Spec Ops to be, I think, a bit preachy, a bit heavy-handed. But I think overall, in what it set out to do, it portrayed its point very vividly. Yeah,
this book definitely spoils this game. Yeah. It spoils The Last of Us. It spoils BioShock.
Yeah, I had actually not finished The Last of Us before I read it.
Yeah, that was an interesting surprise. Yeah. The thing about Spec Ops, and then the reason why he talks about The Last of Us in the first place, which I will not spoil the ending for you, is he's talking about player agency. We've discussed this in the past of video games and how unique they are, because it is a type of media that you are somewhat passively consuming, but you are the one in control of someone, especially in like a role-playing game, or any game where you're kind of taking on that character's identity in the story. You are in control to a certain extent. Walt does talk about this in the book as well, as like, we say they're a game, but they're really just an experience because everything is crafted. Like, you're doing everything that they set out for you to do. So how much control do you really have? But you still, at the end of the day, are the one pressing buttons.
Right.
It is the reason why that guy goes crazy, because you're pressing buttons. So there's a discussion on what agency is, what role it has, and
what else can be done with it.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think there are many games out there that play with the concept of player agency, like Spec Ops?
Yeah. The onset of the indie game scene now, I think it's something that people are playing with more and are being more aware of. And then just playing with the concept of, maybe, all games don't have to involve you shooting someone or beating someone up.
Visual novels.
Yeah.
I love.
Stuff like Kentucky Route Zero, which is basically just like an atmospheric point-and-click adventure game with no puzzles. I think there's one puzzle. There's
no puzzles. There's one puzzle.
There's one puzzle in the beginning. But
you can do everything. You can't do everything. But no, I think a book like this is important at this juncture in video games, because like you said, there are a lot of indie games coming out. There are more and more people who have access to the types of tools that you need to make a video game.
Oh, yeah.
And so more and more people are doing it, and more people are playing with the idea of what a video game is.
Well, and I think that's the point that Walt is ultimately trying to drive at, is, seeing how games can just do better in general.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, and it's hard. Just to sidebar a bit here quickly, it's hard to do that within the context of the AAA game industry, because the amount of money that gets spent on these games is obscene.
It's big business. At the end of the day, there's the developer and the publisher. It's interesting the way he talks about the relationship between those two, because it is very much seen, and this, I will admit, this is the opinion I had going in as well, that the developer is the one who cares about the art to make the game, and the publisher just wants it to make money. Right. They both want it to make money.
When it does make money, the question isn't, let's, just make sure everyone gets paid well necessarily. The question is, how can we make more money? And the answer is to franchise the shit out of everything. This is why you have an Assassin's Creed, like, every year.
Yeah. One of the issues with the fact that then if a game does well and goes on to have sequel after sequel after sequel is that story becomes even more of an afterthought than it originally is. Design in a game comes first, and story comes second, which is so deeply offensive to the core of my person.
Story is, and I think Walt mentions this in the book, it's usually nothing more than a, maybe not even like finely crafted excuse. It's just an excuse to explain why you're doing the things you're doing, usually why you're shooting people in the face. You're a soldier, that's why.
You get a lot of insider info in this book.
Yeah.
A lot of insider info. Like I said, it will spoil some things for you, but hearing about like early iterations of some of these games that I've seen you play.
And why they were not the final iterations.
In positive and negative ways.
Yeah, in positive and negative ways.
Yeah. Yeah, the relationship between the developer and the publisher is more clear in my mind than it ever was. Well, I think the last thing we should talk about when it comes to this book is probably the most hot button. There is a concept called crunch in the video game development process. And it's not exclusive to video games. It is, I'll just let you describe it.
I mean, for those of you who don't know, I'm a software developer in my day job. And sometimes what happens is I'm working on something and there's a deadline set. It's decided by somebody that we just need to get stuff done by a certain day, when getting all that stuff done within that amount of time is not possible without putting in extra hours.
A lot of extra hours.
In the games industry, I mean, it's a huge problem.
Especially because then they announce, we're releasing on this date.
Yeah, and then it's not something you can roll back that easily,
Yeah, once they announce that release date, if it gets pushed, then you're talking about consumer outrage, potential
Yeah, and
sales.
then the reason why they set these dates is because there's a very specific window with certain times of the year, like Christmas, Thanksgiving. So
any other industry.
It culminates in people spending 80 to 100 hours a week killing themselves.
Trying to get
stuff done. And as you can imagine, that's not great at all.
No, it's not great for
It's not great at all. It's not sustainable. It leads to burnout. I mean, people with families can't see their families and stuff like that. And there's a real culture issue right now, I feel like, in the industry with this.
And it's probably not good for the end product as well.
Oh, it's definitely not. There have been, more so in the last couple of years, there have been releases that come out that are buggy as hell, not ready to be released. And we're talking AAA big titles. Yeah. They release and they're a mess. They have day one patches, and even that doesn't fix all of the issues.
It's just not good for anyone.
Yeah.
So Walt does talk about this in the book. He is definitely a workaholic.
Yes, 100%.
Does he come out and say that?
Oh yeah.
Because I know that he shows himself to be that.
The passage where he talks about crunch, he straight up says, "This is not an endorsement, by the way. This is the confession of an addict."
Yeah. He definitely talks about that.
And I mean, up until that point, he's on other projects he's worked on, other games he's worked on, he talks about how he's in the office for 12 hours and he doesn't get in until 10, and he doesn't leave the office until 11 at night sometimes, and he's just drinking all these Red Bulls and all this shit. At one point, he
abusing his body.
Pretty much just for the sake of getting the thing done. And the thing is in the passage where he talks about it, he mentions that crunch is bad, but then he's trying to convey how seductive crunch can be to someone with a certain type of personality. And when I read this, it resonated very much with me because as a software developer who has gone through forms of crunch, I can throw myself into work when I need to, and I can ignore, other aspects of my life.
You're definitely not as bad as him.
I'm not as bad as him. I mean, you pull me back, and you
that's a key though.
Yeah,
he didn't have someone to hold him back. Over your shoulder. Why are you on your email?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Is that your email? And then I'm like, no.
No, you click away fast, I didn't.
But it's very easy. I've found it very easy to just willingly do it. I've been in situations where I'll be working on stuff for work at home, and I finished my stuff for the night, but then I'm just reading emails I sent that day, and I'll spend 2 hours doing that, and then I'll like look at code I've written, just did I do it right? Is there anything wrong? Well, I don't need to be looking at it.
But you
anymore.
have the momentum going.
And that's it. There's a rush to it.
You're being productive.
Yeah.
You feel like you're working towards something with a group of people. It creates a camaraderie.
Yes.
It's a weird collective high.
I've been in teams where I've made friends going through shitty projects. Yeah. They're friends I still have to this day. It's really weird.
It is weird. I'm not a developer, and I have not gone through crunch, but I have gone through intensely busy periods in my industry, the financial industry. It is a weird bringing together of people. I'm close with some of my coworkers because we've gone through some shit together, and I don't know that we would be as close if we had not gone through that.
Dude, I've been in the office until 8, 9 p.m. at night with 2 other developers, and we're all delirious, just laughing, just shooting the shit and laughing and just trying to get stuff done. And the build broke again. Of course it did. Can't wait to get home at midnight. Yeah, I mean, those are the kinds of situations and feelings and experiences it can create, and
which is not often discussed when crunch as a topic is discussed.
No,
because
it's not.
What is focused on, and rightly so, are all the negative effects that it has. How unfair it is to expect that of employees, how bad it is for them physically, mentally, emotionally, and all of that stuff is true. And Walt at no point says, oh, crunch is good. Never at any point does he say that. But he says, I have been attracted to it in the past because of these reasons, because I am naturally a little bit of an addictive personality, because I enjoy throwing myself into work. And he says he still works 6 days a week. And he's now married with a young child and still is fighting this. He's able to pull himself back more, just play into the reflective tone of the book overall.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to read his perspective on it, because if we all know that it's bad, if we all know that companies shouldn't be asking it of employees and employees shouldn't be accepting it, why does it continue to happen? And I think this is part of it. A lot of people are sensitive to the issue of crunch because of all those reasons, and I don't blame them at all.
People have been through, I've been through shit I can't even imagine.
Our experiences being busy at work are just the tip of the iceberg. Like, I cannot imagine.
And I think I think part of that distinction is being able to recognize, even though I've been through a form of it, that I've not seen it in its worst iteration.
Work should not be that demanding upon you. You've said it to me before. If everything goes right, like, crunch shouldn't need to happen.
No, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't. But it still does. So I think the conversation should shift to, like, what can we do earlier in the process to prevent that at the very end? But there was a short excerpt of this book released online to get some excitement going for this book. And it was a section from where he talks about crunch. And I'm not entirely sure that was the best section of the book to be posted.
It was divorced from context of the rest of which I think that section was like 5 pages. You don't have the context that he's a struggling workaholic. You don't have the context that he just throws himself into it and he's got a certain personality. Without that context, you take it very literally.
Yeah, he was giving the personal side to crunch. He wasn't giving the side of it as crunch is a phenomenon. He was giving the side of it of, this is what it feels like to go through. This is why I can become addicted to it. If you remove it from that context, you don't see Walt as a person.
No,
you don't see that this book has that reflective tone. And so people were upset with it. They read it as, this person is saying that crunch is good. And they thought that it was an opinion piece. I would hate to think that something like that would color people's perspectives on the book as a whole. He's so honest about the experience of being in the middle of it that it reads like a glorification of it.
Yes.
But it's not. It's really not. And you need all that context. That's not who Walt Williams is. He has his flaws, that's for sure, but he's very honest about all of them.
Yeah, I think the saddest thing for me was seeing that go up and then the response to it, which, as you said, I mean, rightfully so. Yeah. But I took so much more from the book.
It's a very small section of it, and I would really hate to think that anyone who would like to read this, who would get a lot out of this, people who are often talking about games, be turned off from reading this book because of a section like that. And I know why the crunch section was used is because it is something that a lot of people are talking about right now. And so I understand why that was chosen. But it does not give the best characterization to the book as a whole.
Agreed.
So I think we would both definitely recommend this book.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it's really a lot of fun. There are a lot of really funny parts to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of really kind of heartwarming moments as well. He's talking about meeting a kid at a convention where he's doing demos. The kid kept coming back to see more and more. He was just like the excitement, like a kid on Christmas morning excitement.
I'll tell you why that section resonated with me. It's another dad moment. I can't tell you how many times in high school I watched over and over again the Half-Life 2 demo at E3 during that year. So when that kid just kept coming in over and over again,
you saw yourself.
Yeah, I was like, oh, well, shit, that's me.
Which is why this is a 5-star book for you.
Yes.
Yeah, if you love video games, or even if you're more of a casual player who wants to learn more about the industry, I think this is for you. If you're a writer, I think this is for you. Yeah, he doesn't make any assumptions about your level of expertise. I will say you probably need to know something about video games. Something. You don't have to be an expert. You don't even have to be like up on things.
Do you know that games are a thing where you You press buttons and things happen.
See, there you go. There's your background.
That's it. That's all
you
you
have
need.
it now.
You're set.
You're ready. But it's very entertaining, not very long. I think it would be a great choice for Nonfiction November.
Nice plug.
I know. Well, thank you very much for being on this video.
You're welcome. No problem.
It took nearly 3 years of convincing.
We'll take another 3 to make you do another one.
Okay. If you guys have any comments, questions, insults for Tony, you can put it down in the comment section below. You can also find me and Tony on a variety of places on social media.
You don't want to go to my Twitter.
I will link only my profiles down in the description box below because you don't want to talk to him.
No. There's no capital C content on my Twitter. If you just want to see shit posting, go right ahead. And whining, sure.
But I will link Tony's review of this book on Open Letters Monthly down in the description box. That is definitely worth reading.
I agree.
Nice plug.
Thanks.
Thank you again for being on the video.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for watching. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.
You won't see me.